Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast brought to you by loserpool.com. As ever, I'm your host Harry Symeou, and on this edition we'll be looking ahead to this weekend's North London derby, as well as looking back on the emphatic win over Bournemouth on Wednesday night. Now, it makes sense, doesn't it, to start in chronological order. So we're going to start with the Bournemouth game. Arsenal 5, Bournemouth 1, and it was a brilliant performance. I know I said after the Southampton game that I felt that was one of our best performances of the season. Well, this game topped that, in my opinion. Looking at the initial team selection, I must say I was a little confused in regards to the formation and the amount of defensive players in that starting 11. Now, I know we've seen Arsenal line up at home with that back three or back five, whatever you want to call it, in the past. But for me, Bournemouth were a side that we needed to go out and break down. And so I must admit, when I initially saw the team selection, I was scratching my head a little bit. Unai Emery opted to go with Bernd Leno in goal, Sokratis, Laurent Koscielny, Monreal as a back three, with Jenkinson and Kolasinac operating as wing-backs, Guendouzi and Torreira holding the midfield, Granit Xhaka, of course, missing due to illness, and then Mkhitaryan, Aubameyang and Ozil leading the line. So, I mean, it seemed a little bit negative to me, it seemed a little bit defensive, but I totally understood why we made changes. You know, we've got a huge game coming up on Saturday, the small matter of the North London derby, and of course rotation is key. I'm just not sure about the rotation of the system. I wasn't sure about it at the time. Obviously, I've since been proved wrong because Arsenal went on to blow Bournemouth away. So I'm not going to spend too much time focusing on that because, you know, it's pointless, isn't it? Arsenal won the game. Arsenal played brilliantly, and I guess it was more of a back three against Bournemouth rather than the back five that we've seen sometimes away from home. So I was pleased to see that. Of course, the subs bench was a very strong one. And I think in recent weeks, that's why we've improved, because Unai Emery's had options to turn to on the bench. It's one of the reasons we've improved anyway. Petr Cech, Mohamed Elneny, Aaron Ramsey, Alex Lacazette, Alex Iwobi, Shkodran Mustafi and Denis Suarez were sitting there in reserve. So plenty of quality to select from, plenty of options for the manager to change things if and when he needs to. Now, I know people keep talking about Mesut Ozil, and I know I've gone on about this for weeks now, and it needs to be mentioned again, doesn't it? I mean, he was absolutely sublime against Bournemouth. His quality in the final third was unbelievable. The finish for the first goal, I mean, he kicks the ball into the ground, doesn't he? We've seen him do that before. Completely fools Arthur Boruc. He did get a hand to it, I think, but there was no stopping that. You know, he completely wrong-footed the goalkeeper. And then, I mean, his assist for the Mkhitaryan goal was splendid. You know, you think that he's going to try and find the target there. I think even Arthur Boruc did. He comes scrambling out, and Ozil, just with the deftest of touches, cuts it back to Mkhitaryan, who finishes expertly, and all of a sudden it's Arsenal are in the driving seat. So, you know, some brilliant individual performances last night or Wednesday night from the likes of Mesut Ozil. I thought Henrik Mkhitaryan, though, trumped him. I thought Henrik Mkhitaryan was the man of the match. I don't think anyone will argue with me on that. I think that he really took the game by the scruff of the neck. And what Mkhitaryan gives us is he gives us that quality in the final third, but he also gives us the work rate and the intensity that Unai Emery so clearly wants to see from his players. So a big shout out to Henrik Mkhitaryan. I thought he was the best player on the park by quite some distance. I thought Laurent Koscielny had a good game too. And I know that Bournemouth, you know, are not the strongest of opposition, but I think Laurent Koscielny in the last couple of games has started to look like the Laurent Koscielny of old. Lots of you will say he was finished years ago, and I get it, you know, but I still think he can do a job, and I still think that on his day and when he's playing at the top of his game, he's better than some of the other options we have. He's better than Mustafi, in my opinion. I'd even go as far as saying he's better than Rob Holding. And that's no criticism of Rob Holding, but he's a young player. And you can't really rely on those types of players going into the business end of the season. I know Holding's injured, so it's a different case altogether. But I'm pleased that Koscielny's the one available, if that makes sense. I think his experience is a huge asset to this side. I want to talk a little bit about Mateo Guendouzi. Now, he did make an error last night or Wednesday night, depending on when you're listening to this, that led to Bournemouth's goal. He received the ball on the edge of his penalty area. He sort of shimmied as though he was going to try and turn. He got caught in possession. And I know that Arsenal and a lot of the supporters at the time were appealing for a foul, but for me, it wasn't really a foul. I've watched it back on Match of the Day since. Yes, the attacker comes into him with a bit of force, but he does get a toe to the ball first. And Mateo Guendouzi, for me, has got to be a little bit more careful in those types of situations. It feels as though, he's realised he's made the mistake and he's obviously trying to appeal to get the decision. I get that. I totally understand that. I would probably do the same thing. But that should be a lesson to Guendouzi, to just play it the way you face him, play it simple, play it back to the keeper, or just hook it out or anything, just as safety first in those positions. And that comes, doesn't it, from Arsenal's obsession at the moment with playing from the back. And I get the philosophy. I think it's good in theory, but I think there are times and places where you need to adapt that slightly, and Arsenal will be punished for that if we continue to do things like that. We've been punished for it already this season, so it's just something to be careful of. It's just a reminder of the focus and concentration that's required at this level. Now, in the past, I've said that Mateo Guendouzi is a little bit overrated by our fans, and I stick by that. That's not a criticism of him. I think he's a fantastic player. He's a fantastic prospect. And what I will say is I was very, very impressed by the way he didn't let that error affect him. He just got on with the game. He continued to demand the ball in those positions. Nothing seems to faze this young man, and for that he deserves an immense amount of credit. So Mateo Guendouzi, take a bow, son, because I thought you recovered brilliantly from that, and I was really pleased to see that. And as someone who has at times questioned his maturity, I was pleased to be proved wrong. I enjoy being proved wrong when it comes to positive things with Arsenal. At the end of the day, I'm an Arsenal supporter and I want to see the best for this team. Now, before I go into my player ratings for the Bournemouth game, which is something I think I'm going to start doing going forward, let me know if it's something you want. At the end of the day, this show is for you guys, the listeners, and I want to hear what you guys enjoy. But I just want to make one more point about the Bournemouth game, and that's an issue that I'm seeing with this formation, with this three at the back thing. I've brought it up on shows in the past, and I want to touch on it once again, just as sort of a reminder. I understand why Unai decides to play like that. I understand that when you're playing with two very attack-minded wing-backs, you want to have that extra insurance policy in the back line. I completely get that, and I think it's been a sensible decision most of the times that Unai's gone with it. So I'm not being overly critical of that formation. I have been critical, though, of the fact that we keep chopping and changing between the two. I don't think that's helpful for the players. I get that there are certain games where one is more beneficial than the other, but I think that in Unai's mind, he should have one go-to system that he picks most of the time, because I think that's how players adapt to a system. That's how players learn it inside out. It's by playing it over and over again. Continuity is key. But the issue I have with this back three thing is, if you're going to play out from the back over and over again, which obviously is a clear instruction from the boss, because Bernd Leno is obsessed with playing it short, isn't he, to his defenders. I think the problem that we're having is when teams press us a little higher up the pitch and we have that one less midfield option, we're struggling to get the ball out. We're struggling to make that transition from the back three into the midfield. And our midfielders are having to drop so deep that we end up in situations like the one that happened to Mateo Guendouzi, where they're dispossessed on the edge of the box and all hell breaks loose, basically. So what I don't like about that system, I guess the point I'm trying to make is I don't like the fact that we have less options in the midfield for the centre-backs to find. And I feel as though often we see them just playing the ball side to side between each other, desperately waiting for that gap to appear, for that crack to open, so that we can play our way out. If that crack doesn't appear, we end up going long, and then it kind of defeats the object of playing that way in the first place. So that's my only concern with that system, and I worry that if we play like that at Spurs, which I'll come on to the Spurs game in a minute, but if we play like that at Spurs, that's a real concern of mine. Now, on to my player ratings for Arsenal 5, Bournemouth 1. Bernd Leno, I'm going to give him a 7. I didn't think he had a great deal to do last night, which was a testament to the way we defended for the most part. But he did make a spectacular save in the first half. I think it was from Ryan Fraser, where he got down to his left-hand side, had a really strong arm and kept it out. And then Koscielny came across and saved the day with a block. So I'm going to give Bernd Leno a 7 for that performance. Socrates, he gets another 7 for me. Very organised, as always, directing his defenders. I thought he done well playing as the right-sided centre-half of the three. I don't think he's in his most comfortable position playing there. I think he prefers to be one of two. But, you know, he's able to adapt, and that's great, you know, and he's done it well without any complaints. He's just got on with it, and he's done a superb job again. So he gets a 7 from me. Laurent Koscielny gets an 8 for me yesterday. I thought he defended spectacularly well. Again, for the most part, I thought he done brilliantly to get back and block that shot that I mentioned earlier after Bernd Leno's save. I thought he also done really well when Josh King was running at him, and King subsequently got booked for diving, but Koscielny showed maturity not to dive in there. He just kind of stood his ground, and King went over like a ton of bricks and ended up getting booked. So that was good from Koscielny. He kind of played chicken with King and ended up winning. So and also, you know, he got on the score sheet, didn't he? And that's the third goal from an Arsenal centre-back in the last 2 games, so that's great to see as well. So yeah, Laurent Koscielny gets an 8 for me. Nacho Monreal with a solid 7. I didn't think he had a great game, but I didn't think he put a foot wrong either. I guess when you don't really notice a defender throughout a game, it's kind of a good sign, isn't it? I'm not saying that he went completely unnoticed, but for me, it was just a very solid performance from Nacho Monreal, so a solid 7. Sead Kolasinac, I'm going to give him a 7.5, and the reason for that is particularly in the first half. I know he went off in the second half quite early on, but in the first half, he was a huge threat down that left-hand side. He has been all season. Fantastic player. Really makes the most of it when he gets into those positions. He makes it count, and, you know, it's funny, isn't it? Like, he's a left back, a left wing back, whatever you want to call him. But I tell you what, Alex Iwobi could learn a thing or two from Kolasinac's ability to find the end product. So 7.5 for Sead Kolasinac. Carl Jenkinson on the right hand side. Oh, where do I go with this one? I'm going to give him a 6.5, and he only gets that extra half for effort and because I like him. Everybody likes Carl Jenkinson, don't they? But in terms of quality, he's not up to the standard required, is he? I think he's a workhorse. I think we saw a couple of times in the first half where he bombed down the right wing, and I think it was Aubameyang that had the ball, and he just kind of looked towards Jenkinson and thought, nah, you're all right, mate. I think I'll go on my own. You know, it's not his fault. I think he's only at the club because we couldn't shift him because of the wages he's on. Nobody else would take him on. So, you know, 6.5 for Carl Jenkinson. Likeable guy and everything, geeing up the crowd in the first half. But other than that, he's not quite up to it. Mateo Guendouzi, I'm going to give a 7. I thought that he was better in the second half. I remember one particular pass he played over the top to Lacazette. It was a fantastic ball. But the reason I won't give him more than that is because of that error that he made in the first half that led to Bournemouth's goal. But having said that, he recovered brilliantly from it. So he deserves a lot of credit after last night. That'll be a learning curve for him. And, you know, young players need these experiences to go on and become better. Lucas Torreira alongside Mateo Guendouzi. Now, Lucas Torreira for me, I'm going to give him a 6.5 as well, and it might sound a little bit harsh, but Lucas Torreira for me seems to have dropped off in recent weeks. I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure if he's tired. I know that playing in Italy, they usually would have had a winter break by now. Has that had an effect on his performances? He seems a little bit less disciplined lately. He seems to be chasing shadows a lot more, and I don't really like that. I don't know if that's an instruction from the boss, but this is not just based on the Bournemouth game. I'm talking overall. Last couple of months, I think his performances have dropped off slightly. So what did I say I was going to give him? Did I say a 6? I'm going to give him a 6. Henrik Mkhitaryan, 9. Fantastic performance. Probably his best in an Arsenal shirt to date. Obviously getting on the score sheet. Assists too, linked up brilliantly with Mesut Ozil, linked up brilliantly with his old mate Aubameyang. So yeah, 9 for me for Henrik Mkhitaryan. Mesut Ozil gets a solid 8 from me. Again, linked up brilliantly with the other forwards. Tracked back quite a bit last night as well and made some crucial interceptions and tackles in our defensive third, which is something that people have knocked him for. Seems as though he's... What's the word? I think he feels as though he's got a point to prove, and I'm not praising Emery for the management of that situation. I will no way attribute Ozil's performances to Emery's man management, because I think it's been nothing short of awful. And I think the way the boss has handled this situation has been terrible, which I've said in previous shows, so that will come as no surprise to you. But yeah, Mesut Ozil, an 8, 9, I don't know, somewhere in between there. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, didn't think he did all that much in the first half, but he's a goal threat, isn't he? And he pops up in the right position, so I'll give him a 7. So fair play to him. Alex Iwobi came on as a sub. Alex Lacazette came on as a sub. So did Denis Suarez. Special mention to Alex Lacazette for that sublime free kick. I still think Boris should have saved it, but that's neither here nor there. The fact is it hit the back of the net, and that's all that matters.
Enjoying what you've heard so far? If so, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave us a review on iTunes.
Right, it's time to look ahead to the small matter of this weekend's North London derby. A North London derby that's become all the more interesting, seeing as Spurs have lost 2 on the trot. They lost at Burnley, they lost at Stamford Bridge. Arsenal have the opportunity to close the gap on them to just 1 point with a victory at Wembley. Almost said White Hart Lane there, but of course their stadium's still not ready, is it? Useless bastards. I'm not going to bore you with facts and statistics and historical figures, because those come up every time there's a North London derby, don't they? So I'm going to spend the next few minutes looking at how I would approach the game, how I would line up the side. And I'd like to hear your thoughts, of course, too. That's what this platform is all about. We want to hear from you guys. You can tweet us at Chronicles_AFC, or, of course, you can email me if you prefer the more old school way, and that's chroniclesafc@gmail.com. Don't forget to tune into the review show on Tuesday morning too. It'll be out then, and I'll be joined by Jeremy Aliadier and, fingers crossed, the one and only Arseblog, Andrew himself, is hoping to join us. So fingers crossed that works out, and I'll have the pair of them on for what should be a fantastic show. Right, so in terms of the team I'd go with on Saturday lunchtime, I'd go with Bernd Leno in goal. I'd go with a back 4. I think Arsenal just look a lot more comfortable playing that way. I think it's clear that Arsenal are incapable of defending, whether it's with a back 3 or with a back 4. So we might as well get the maximum out of our midfield and try and win the game in that area of the field. So my back 4 would be Sad Kolasinac at left back. I'd go with Laurent Koscielny, assuming that he shakes off the knock he picked up against Bournemouth, and Socrates. And this is going to come as a surprise to some of you, but I'd go with Shkodran Mustafi at right back, because I think having him there means that when Kolasinac does get forward, we can sort of shift over into a back 3 and have that little extra bit of protection. I know it means we'll be a little bit one-dimensional in the sense that most of our attacking play will be going down the same side, but I think that's a pretty smart move. And I think that, you know, and most of you will disagree with me, but I think that Shkodran Mustafi could do a job there. And I think he could be better there for Arsenal. He has played there for Germany before. And Joachim Löw is not a coach to turn your nose up at. So he knows something that maybe we're missing. So I would give that a try. In the midfield, again, assuming that he returns from illness, Granit Xhaka would start there alongside Lucas Torreira for me. I think that pairing gives Arsenal the best balance. I think that it's got a bit of everything in there. There's ball playing skills. There's a bit of physicality. There's a physical presence in Granit Xhaka. There's a dogged, intense, hard-working, industrious midfielder in Lucas Torreira, and they can both spray a pass. So I'd like to see those two starting in the middle of the park. Ahead of those would be the trio for me of Henrik Mkhitaryan, Mesut Ozil, and Alex Iwobi. I think Mkhitaryan and Ozil are just in too good a form to be dropped, to be honest with you. And I think there's no concerns about Mkhitaryan's work rate. You know he'll put that in. You know Iwobi would put that in too on the other side. So those two would kind of set the scene for Mesut Ozil to flourish, and I like that idea. So that would be my 3 there. And I'd actually start with Alexander Lacazette up top. And I know it sounds harsh on Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, given he scored, 16 Premier League goals this season. But I just think that in that type of game, when you need someone to hold the ball up, to put it about the centre-halves and be a little bit more industrious, I think that Alex Lacazette is your man there. I think he brings others into the game better, and I think Aubameyang is a very, very good option to bring on from the bench when the game's a little bit more stretched. I think David Hillier made that point on the podcast this week, that on the main podcast, I should say, episode 52, that he felt that Aubameyang was more suited to those situations, and I completely agree with him. It was a fantastic point. So that would be my team going into Saturday's game. I'd like to hear again what you guys think. Tweet me at Chronicles_AFC. Email me chroniclesafc@gmail.com and let me know your thoughts. Now, how do I see this one going? It's very, very difficult to say, isn't it? I know there's been lots of talk about the fact that Arsenal have won 2 games on the bounce, and that that we beat Southampton convincingly and we beat Bournemouth convincingly, and that Spurs lost at Burnley and they then lost at Stamford Bridge. But I think form kind of goes out the window when we're talking about derbies. I think Spurs will be right up for it. There'll be a huge crowd at Wembley. And I know it's not their real home, but they've kind of made it their home. Their record there has been brilliant since they've had to start playing their games there. So it's not a game I'm looking forward to. It's not a game I'm particularly confident about. But as I said on the Same Old Arsenal last week, for me, having beaten Bournemouth, having beaten Southampton, it's all about avoiding defeat in this one. That is the key. It's more about Spurs not getting the extra 3 points on us rather than us making up 3 points on them. I think looking at the run-in, looking at the fixtures remaining, I'm pretty confident that we can put a run together for the rest of the season. So I think avoiding defeat is key. And, I kind of think the same about the United game, which is around the corner as well, but we'll save that talk for next week. In terms of a prediction, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I'm feeling optimistic. I don't think we'll be able to keep a clean sheet, but I also think we'll score. So, a 1-1 draw would be a very positive result, a very respectable result, in my opinion, given the way both our seasons have gone so far. And, it's all about making it back into the top 4, isn't it? That's our goal this season. And as long as we achieve Champions League qualification, whether that's through the Europa League or through the Premier League channel, I don't really mind. I just want to see Arsenal back in the big time. I think, lots of people are worried about Harry Kane, and that's understandable given his record against us. But incidentally, they have lost the 2 games he's come back for. So I don't want to tempt fate or anything, but I think that their real threat at the moment, and I don't know if he'll be selected from the start. I'm not privy to Pochettino's team selections. I don't even take that much notice of him, if I'm being completely honest. But I think that is that how you say it? Heung-min Son, that's it. Heung-min Son is a real threat. He's pacey, he's quick, he's intelligent, he's tricky. He caused us all sorts of problems at the Emirates, dived and won a penalty. So he's got a bit of shithousery about him as well. And I think he's a player that maybe doesn't always get the right amount of focus that he deserves from opposition managers, but he's someone that we need to look to stop. Of course, Christian Eriksen too is capable of pulling strings from a slightly deeper role. Dele Alli is capable of popping up with a goal as well. So Tottenham have plenty of threat of their own, but they're also not bulletproof when it comes to their defence. I know they've got a pretty good record. They've got some really strong centre-halves, but their fullbacks are a little bit suspect for me, as is Hugo Lloris. He makes all kinds of errors in top games. He's done it time and time again. And so I'm confident that Arsenal can get something here. It's all about getting the game plan right. And I think Unai Emery said in his press conference following the Bournemouth game, didn't he, that he will be watching that Spurs-Chelsea game back to work out his game plan. That's encouraging. And I know I've criticised Unai Emery at certain points this season, but fair play to him. He's gone back to basics. He seemed to have lost his way for a little bit, but he's got the team back on track. Let's hope he can prove me and many others wrong even further by going on and getting a positive result at Wembley, because this is now a huge game. And I tell you what, if we go there and we come away with all 3 points, we'll be 1 point behind Spurs, and then it's squeaky bum time, isn't it? Spurs, from being in the title race 2-3 weeks ago, will now be dragged back into the race for the top 4, and you know, we know what their mental strength is like. We've got plenty of examples to refer back to. So that's how I see it going. 1-1 draw. That's the team I'd go with. I'd like to hear what you guys think. Please leave your predictions, leave your comments in the comment section below if you're on YouTube. If you're listening via iTunes, don't forget to hit subscribe. Please like the video if you're on YouTube. This is an audio-only podcast, but we will be uploading it to YouTube anyway. Up the Gunners, and fingers crossed we can come away with all 3 points. Never like this build-up to North London derby. It's always a bit stressful, isn't it? Particularly in the last few seasons. I'll be back, as I've already mentioned, on Tuesday morning, where I'll be joined by Jeremy Ali Adier, the former Gunners striker, and fingers crossed I'll have Andrew from Arsblog on too. So it's a show that you won't want to miss. Until then, guys, take care.